Good morning. Today's service is about reclaiming our senses. Welcome. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to church. Whether this is your first time at People's Church or you come every Sunday or anywhere in between, I welcome you. My name is Becky Moffett-Moore, and I'm from the Sunday Services Committee. People's Church is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association and a part of a traditional liberal religion. Here, our mission is to be a beloved community, embracing and serving our diverse world. This morning's reflection comes from Gay Walker. Gay is an artist, art therapist, and Airbnb owner. She retired 5 years ago from Western Michigan University as the director of holistic health. At the same time, John, her husband of 50 years, passed away. She has learned to find joy in the little things. As a member of People's Church since 1985, she has been on the Sunday Service Committee and currently coordinates a chalice circle and manages the art wall. Thank you, Gay. Recently, she was given an unexpected award by the Fetzer Institute in honor to start an expressive arts program and gallery at the New Bronson Cancer Center. As a 3-time cancer survivor, her work with cancer is not over. Our summer services are structured in a way for personal participation, both in person and on Zoom this morning. After the reflection, everyone here in the flesh and those on Zoom will have the opportunity to share our thoughts and experiences about the message Gay will be presenting us. This morning, we ask Zoom people to find a stone or something small to hold in your hand and a piece of candy or a raisin to use later in the service. Welcome, everyone. We have 2 announcements this morning. The first announcement, Reverend Rachel has asked me to announce that we are 2/3 of the way to our goal for our living wage fund, which would ensure that all the People's Church employees receive a living wage for their labor. We need about $2,000 more to reach our goal by June 30th. Your contributions would be much appreciated. And Pat Nelson has also an announcement. Yes.
I mentioned this last Sunday. I don't know if everybody knows that this week the General Assembly of Unitarian Universalists has been going on in Washington State. That's our national meeting. And today at 12:30, the church service is going to be streamed live in room 19, 9:30 a.m. Washington. We get it at 12:30. And there'll be some treats or some snacks to have in between the end of the service and 12:30 for anybody who wants to come.
Hymnal.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
For those of you with us on Zoom, if you're lighting a chalice at home, please write in the chat box where you're lighting it from, the street, neighborhood, town, your state. Faith in Summer by Ellen Hamilton. In faith, together we light this small scrap of light, symbol of grandfather's son, enormous power, whose energy burns so brightly. In these days of summer, catapulting the leaves and the vines, the vegetables, the flowers, and the fruits to astonishing size, lengths, and heights, spilling over the tops of cages and walls and trellises, delighting and nourishing all beings. We bask in the warmth and the heat of these days, with lightened hearts, quickened senses, in gratitude and in faith. Each Sunday, we take a moment to share with one another the joys and sorrows, concerns and milestones in our lives. If you're here in person or in flesh, I invite you to come forward, place a stone in the bowl of water, and speak briefly in the microphone for all to hear. For those on Zoom who would like to share, raise your hand, and Andrea will unmute you. Or you can type a message in the chat box, and Melissa will read it. If you prefer not to share the details, you may say or type the word stone, and we will keep you in our thoughts. We'll pause recording so that you have some measure of privacy.
Your eyes closed, imagine that you're seeing with your inner eye or your third eye a beautiful sunset over a lake. Imagine that you're seeing a pen slowly writing your name on a piece of paper. Imagine seeing a beautiful rainbow. And take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, just for a moment, feel a sense of gratitude for this marvelous sense of sight that you have been given. And now we'll switch to the sense of touch. So imagine touching the smooth belly of a puppy on its back. Imagine holding someone's hand. Feel the weight and the warmth coming from that hand. And imagine putting your hand in a waterfall. Take another deep breath in, and as you exhale, feel a sense of gratitude for the marvelous sense of touch you've been given. And now we switch to the sense of smell. Imagine that you're smelling homemade bread baking in the oven. Imagine smelling popcorn in a movie theater. Imagine smelling a campfire. And take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, feel a sense of gratitude for this marvelous sense of smell you've been given. And now we switch to the sense of taste. Imagine that you're tasting a lemon. Imagine that you're tasting a hot fudge sundae. Imagine tasting a sun-ripened tomato right off the vine. And take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, find a sense of gratitude for this marvelous sense of taste that you've been given. And now we switch to the sense of hearing. Imagine that you're hearing birds on a spring morning. Imagine that you're hearing the voice of someone who is no longer here. Imagine that you're hearing your heart beat. And feel a sense of gratitude for the marvelous sense of hearing you've been given. And take another deep breath in, and as you exhale, come back to this room with a heightened sense of these senses that you've experienced. And you can open your eyes.
The offering message this morning, excuse me, it's by Heather Christensen. It's called Individually and Together. Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace, justice, love, and joy. That vision is embodied in a few large congregations, numerous mid-sized congregations, and many, many, many small congregations. No matter its size, every congregation depends on each of its members. Each one of you, by your commitment of time, energy, and resources, helps make that grand vision real. Individually and together, we are Unitarian Universalists building a world with peace and justice, love and joy. For those on Zoom, there is a link in the chat box. The offering will now be received.
When I was a boy each week, on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. And when I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad, miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small. Even better magic trick is that anything is here at home. So challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, to finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, barely wet my fingertips. Now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of air. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down. But I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. questioning child's face. Say it's not a testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come. Say it's not a sacrament, to hear that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down. But I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now.
Please join me in giving thanks for all that sustains us. For the countless gifts we each have been given, gifts of life and love and sustenance, we bring these small portions to share in the works of love which none of us can accomplish alone. The first reading this morning is entitled Invitation by Mary Oliver. Oh, do you have the time to linger for just a little while out of your busy and very important day for the goldfinches that have gathered in the field of thistles for a musical battle, to see who can sing the highest note or the lowest, or the more expressive of mirth or the most tender? Their strong, blunt beaks drink the air as they strive melodiously, not for your sake, not for mine, and not for the sake of winning, but for sheer delight and gratitude. Believe us, they say, it is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in the broken world. I beg of you, do not walk by without pausing to attend to this rather ridiculous performance. It could mean something. It could mean everything. It could be what Rilke meant when he wrote, "You must change your life." The second reading, God's Wound, by Mark Nepo. Beyond all the pain has taught me, the soft well at the base of time has opened, and life touching me there has turned me into a flower that prays for rain. Now I understand. To blossom is to pray. To wilt and shed is to pray. To turn to mulch is to pray. To stretch in the dark is to pray. To break surface after great months of ice is to pray. And to squeeze love up the stalky center toward the sky with only dreams of color is to pray. And finally to unfold again as if never before is to be the prayer.
So hopefully you all have a stone in your hand, and those of you on Zoom, some small object. If you didn't get a stone, they're out in the hallway on the table. And also you have a candy, a wrapped candy that you're going to hold on to, but don't unwrap it yet. Okay. So COVID allowed me to go deeper and awaken my senses. To do this, I had to slow down and simplify. I've always been a person who's in high gear. That's my norm. And I didn't even know that I could have a slow gear in me, but I found it, and I found the joy in my slow gear. And in finding this new rhythm, I started noticing more things as I slowed down. And, I think we miss so many things when we're busy and multitasking and racing around. So we have to slow down, take time, simplify, and notice. When there are no meetings, events to dash off to, there's not so much competition. So I decided to spend this precious gift of time in nature. My husband John used to spend a lot of time doing nothing, or so I thought. And then I learned that doing nothing is really paying attention. That's what he was doing. And so I've taken that on. I understand his doing nothing now. And with the slowing down, I can be more aware of how my senses are activated and magically renewed. So this kind of slowing down has given me these little pieces of joy, and I look for them. So before COVID, I always looked for the big sources of joy, the parties, the graduations, the musicals. And now I'm realizing it's the little joys that are always there, that are constant and giving me just a wonderful feeling. So when I moved into my little house 5 years ago, there were no flowers anywhere. So every fall, I've purchased 100 different bulbs and planted them, and in each hole, my husband's ashes are in the hole. So then in the spring, when they start popping up, and then all the colors start coming out, and the fragrance, and there's John just in a different form. And it's a whole cycle of life. And it gives me this sense of wonder, I feel like a little kid again. And I've been trying to figure out what prayer really is. And I think I found that walking in the woods with Nola, my little puppy, gets me the closest to prayer and the connection to the sacred. Not in the biblical sense, but more like Shirin Yoku, which is the Japanese word for forest bathing. Forest bathing is simply being in nature, connecting with it through all of our senses, sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. It's like a bridge. By opening our senses, it bridges the gap between us and the natural world. Forest bathing is the practice of immersing yourself in nature in a mindful way, using your senses to derive the whole range of benefits for your physical, mental, emotional, and social health. This idea took place in Japan in the 1980s, and it's been very effective as a tool to overcome the effects of a hectic life. So forest bathing in nature allows stressed portions of your brain to relax, and you have positive hormones. So Mary Oliver writes, "For me, the door to the woods is the door to the temple." So for me, walking in the woods is a form of worship. And as an artist, my senses are my most important way of tasting and knowing about the world. And what I've discovered is nature is full of metaphors and is a wonderful teacher if we take the time to notice. Nature is predictable. The seasons, we know that in the spring the flowers come, in the fall the leaves fall down, and then the snow follows. And this is a cycle of life that we can count on. When the leaves fall to the ground and become mulch, they become nutrition for the next season of the tree. So it's a reminder to me that death is a part of the process that nurtures life as it changes form. Pruning is another example. COVID made me realize how much stuff I was holding on to that I no longer needed. So I let a lot of things go. Pruning of dead branches is necessary to allow new growth. Mother Nature does this all the time, and we can learn from her. So let's look at the senses. So the first sense we're going to consider is vision. So look at your stone or the object that you're holding on to. What is its shape? Get to know it. What are its colors? You might think it's all one color, but there are lots of other colors in there. And now imagine what's inside the stone, the part that you can't see. And imagine that you are infusing this stone with your unique strengths or healing energy and put that into your stone. So you can use this stone as a reminder. Keep it in your pocket or in your purse to remind you about the healing aspects of nature. Mom Nature is the best artist. Have you ever noticed her amazing design in sunsets, cloud formations, bugs, birds, fish, flowers, and trees? Diversity, pattern, color, and balance are all aspects of art, and they're seen in nature. As an artist myself, color is a key element. I love color, and in nature you can find all colors. When Mother Nature creates a sunset, she uses many vivid colors. In the woods, we are enveloped by green around us and the blue overhead. Color therapy suggests that green is a healing color and it's soothing. And when we are immersed in the woods, we get a big dose of the vibration of green. It's always there. But it can be a little joy if you notice it. Sky blue is considered a calming color, and research has shown in the presence of sky blue or baby blue, our brain excretes 11 tranquilizing hormones, and it makes us relax. When I worked in hospice, we often suggested that people use a blue blanket or a blue nightgown, or my students used to wear a blue shirt when they were taking an exam, just to get the subtle calming influence. We each have a color identity that we associate ourselves with a favorite color. I'm an Aquarian, I'm a swimmer, and I love blues and greens, and that's where I'm most comfortable. So what color do you have the most of in your closet? Think about what's in your closet. What do you always reach for? What are the colors in your living room? What are the colors that speak to you? And we also know that people that live in the South tend towards cool colors in their wardrobe and in their decor because they get relief from the heat. And yet people who live in Alaska or Maine usually are drawn to the warm colors, the deep reds, because they get the benefit. And I know that if I'm tired or chilly on a winter day, I'll put on a red sweater and I get the benefit of that vibration. It's very subtle, but it's there. So now let's talk about sound. Before COVID, a big high for me used to be going to musical theaters. And since much of that has curtailed, I've found joy in the songs of the birds. Just little tiny songs, and you hear them over and over and over again. And also, I'm finding that sometimes being quiet, a vacation from sound and noise, is important. I marvel at the sounds of nature when I focus and listen for them. I got hearing aids at the beginning of COVID, so the sounds are much more delicious now. The bees buzzing, the frogs singing, all the different bird calls, the sound of the wind or the sound of the rain or waterfall. It's a symphony in nature. And sound doesn't have to come directly from nature because we can use music to influence our mood. If you're stressed, listening to soft music, slow music, your body can entrain to that music and settle you down. And yet when I clean house, I often put on bright, peppy music, and I get a cleaner house that way, and I'm more active. And music can elicit memories, as most of the senses can connect you to memories. When you hear a certain piece of music, you can be transported to someplace else immediately. When I hear Moon River, I imagine dancing with John on our first date, and then every anniversary for the next 50 years after that. When I hear that song, I'm totally connected with John. Concerts in the park started last summer, and now that we can go to the park and hear music outside, that little joy is a big joy, and it's coming back to us again. So now let's talk about smell, because the flowers in the spring, and that feeling when you open the window for the first time in the spring and you smell that fresh air, all the wonderful smells of the rain, and even the wet dirt. And for me, the lavender growing in my garden gives me those little sparks of joy. Memories can also connect us with smell. My grandfather used rose oil every morning. He rubbed his head and his scalp. And when I smell roses, I think of my grandfather. And our sense of smell protects us. It protects us from eating rotten food, as the food gives off an odor that tells us it's not good, like soured milk or rotten meat. I use a natural, non-poisonous mole repellent in my yard that is made out of castor oil, cayenne pepper, and garlic. And it's not poisonous. And I sprinkle it on the yard, and the moles don't like the smell, and they move to someone else's yard, or they move to my front yard, but it doesn't kill them. So walking with Nola in the woods, I realize how she experiences it differently than I do. She experiences the woods through her nose. And she smells every dog, every bunny, every deer that's ever been on that walk, and then of course has to pee on that spot and leave her scent for the next dog to smell when she goes by. So let's talk about taste. There's nothing like the taste of a ripe tomato picked off the vine, and it's still warm, and you bite into it and the juice runs down your face. Or picking wild raspberries. I love to walk in Asylum Lake, and next month they'll be there, and you can have dessert as you walk along. And the memories for me of my grandfather or my grandmother who cooked favorite foods of Thanksgiving can be awakened. Those memories can be awakened by different foods. I'm so glad that the farmers markets have opened up and freshly picked produce is available. It tastes so much better than the same thing imported from Mexico that has traveled a long way to the supermarket. I bought beets yesterday at the farmers market and had them for dinner last night. My dad grew beets in his garden, and when I eat beets, I think of my dad. So there's that connection to memory through that sense. And rather than going to a feast at food dance, I can find little joys in making my own food. I love experimenting with different spices and eating mindfully. I find that I'm going out of my way to excite my taste buds and create interesting meals instead of treating cooking as a chore. And so if we can slow down and taste the food as we're eating it and savor it, There's a little joy in that pleasure. Instead of grabbing a fast food something and stuffing it in your mouth as you're driving someplace and not even thinking about what you have in your mouth. And now we'll move to the sense of taste. And in a real way. So you have a piece of candy in your hand and you unwrap it and put this piece of candy in your mouth and suck on it, or do whatever your mouth wants to do with it. And as you're eating this, sucking it, be aware of the flavor that starts to pop out. Be aware of how your mouth starts to salivate. Be aware that your tongue maybe wants to go around it and feel what you have in your mouth. You may have the urge to bite it and crunch it and let loose some of the flavor. So just be aware of what's happening in your mouth. And if we can eat this way all the time, we can find the pleasure in taste. And you can continue to suck on your hard candy as we move to the sense of touch. So obviously for all of us, the lack of touch during COVID has been difficult. I'm a hugger, and I miss hugging friends and family. I get plenty of hugs and kisses from my puppy. I don't know what I would do without her, especially the wet kisses in the morning. But I want to be hugging in the community again, and this is our sense of connection. But I'm also aware that touch doesn't have to be always around other humans or pets, but it can include the feel of the sun on your face, the feeling of the wind blowing in your hair. You can touch the bark of a tree and feel the amazing texture, or holding a rock in your hand. I love to dig holes in the garden and plant native new plants, and I'm fully engaged in touch as I'm playing with the dirt and settling the little plants in. Also, walking barefoot on the beach and letting the sand, or feeling the sand as it squishes up between your toes, is a little joy. And even though we're not hugging, we can feel touch in these ways. And as an artist, I love touching my brush to the paint and stroking the canvas and watching new images emerge. It's a little joy to watch my hand give birth to a painting. So in conclusion, I'm finding that slowing down and paying attention to our senses, that we can find the little joys that life has to offer. I think we must teach our children to smell the earth, to taste the rain, to touch the wind, to see things grow, to hear the sunrise and the night fall, and to care. These are the gifts of life, and we need to be grateful for them. And so now we're going to have an open discussion, and the two questions, and you can nuance these if you choose. One is, what have you noticed about your senses during the lockdown and COVID? Or what are the little joys you have experienced during this time?
Quick guidelines for discussion. Please come up front to the microphone if you are able or comfortable, so people on Zoom can see who is speaking. Say your name. Please speak the truth as you understand it to avoid inhibiting the flow of discussion. Do not comment on others' comments until everyone has had a chance to do initial sharing. You saw my lifesaver in my mouth. For those of you on Zoom who would like to share your thoughts, hopefully we can get it working this time. Please raise your hand and Andrea will unmute you, but you've got to remember to unmute yourself on your side too.
Oh, thank you so much, Gay. I'm Brian Lewis, and her talk stimulates an interesting memory for me relating to smell. And it was rather powerful because I was awkward 12-year-old, 13-year-old at the time. And it relates to trace memory, which is another way of talking about engrams, which are triggering in your mind some mental history of a taste or a smell or whatever. So here's the story. I'm gleefully, happily sharing my excitement at the smell of a lady at a, you all on the Midwest call it party store. But anyway, she was cleaning her counter, and I was like telling her, oh, this smells so wonderful. It reminds me of my daycare. Now, of course, the chuckles, obviously, everyone is knowing why it would be weird for her. She was all upset and mad at me and blah, blah, blah. And I was like totally on the other side. I was so full of joy at being reminded of my daycare. It was so funny. So I had to share the story. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Tim Kiefer, and I don't typically do these things. But Gay's comments made me think about how I discovered the true joy of cooking during COVID. I became a member of a community-supported agriculture program and picked up a box of fresh produce every week and figured out what to do with it. And I also, during COVID, bought myself a new record player. My old one had been broken for a long time. And I enjoyed playing my 50-year-old albums. I realized I had albums from 50 years ago, groups like America, that I would play while I was cooking. And it would take me back to so many people and so many places from 50 years ago. It was just astounding. I also was given a little music box, a little electronic Bluetooth music box that I could connect my Pandora on my phone to. So I could just turn that on, and my current station and back then was the Hall & Oates radio station. So I would play Hall & Oates while I was cooking in my kitchen, and I was just dancing around, and I'm sure I burned more than a few things because I was distracted by Hall & Oates and all the other musical groups of the time. But it made me, Gay's talk made me realize how much I love to eat and how much I love to listen to music of my past.
My name's Michael Leonard. Mike, when I, during the pandemic, I had to take down the kitchen clock that had died, or you know how they have little batteries in the back nowadays. And it was a clock that was on the wall of my best friend's house, who's his mother had died, and he asked me if there was anything I wanted. And so I said the clock, because while my family wasn't very stable, his was always stable. So that was my kind of my home base. And so when I first got the clock, it had the smell of his house that I always remembered when I was a kid. And then, of course, when I smelled it now, it didn't smell that way anymore because it was the smell of my house. But in any case, it did make me that I could still remember, that smell, because the object, even though it had lost the smell, I still had the memory of the smell. So isn't that sort of a double kind of meta? But in any case, I just thought I'd share that. And I still have that clock because I want to put it up in my new kitchen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Heather Renter. I have two stories that I'll try and keep really short. So when the pandemic started, I was living in Grand Rapids, Michigan, downtown on a very busy street in a little tiny house with 2 kids, 2 dogs, 1 husband, 2 cats, and 1 rabbit. And every surface, every part of my little tiny house served as 2 or 3 things. So when my kids were home and I had a 1-year-old at the time, it was, my laundry room, was my bedroom, was my office, was the kids' playroom. My dining room was unidentifiable as a dining room. So there was a lot happening in my spaces. And it was always there. It was always this pressure and this tension. So I was also working from home. And I was trying to make a habit of not sitting too much in front of my computer, which would be 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes easily, but with many, many little micro distractions that made me feel insane. So there was a huge oak tree at the end of our street, one of the few actual emblems of nature in the place I was living at the time. So it took about 2 minutes to walk to this tree. So every 20 minutes or so, I'd try and get up and walk to the tree. But then I felt this nagging need to not be too far away from my computer or my kids or the animals or anything else. So sometimes I would just stand under the tree when I got there because I didn't want to leave it. It was just far enough away and I could see it from my window if I really craned my neck. But the thing I started to notice when I was there was the things I would see: the sky, the color of the tree, the way the tree changed, the little ants and the little cicada shells that I would pick off the tree and take to my daughter, which was a big joy for her, the way they would crunch. And that took me back to a lot of childhood memories in nature. My grandparents owned a campground. So trees have always kind of been a teacher, a shelter for me, and a great connector. So the second story is that, the sign said, "Take a stone that speaks to you." Well, I just took any stone. Nothing really called to me, but immediately my eye went to the one Werther's candy that was in the bowl. And the reason for that is because it reminded me of my grandmother. So immediately, before knowing what we were doing today, that Werther's took me back to the woods. It took me back to my grandmother. It took me back to all of those sights and sounds. So I'm grateful for that today. Thank you.
The sense that's powerful for me is my sense of smell. And it's been ever since I was teeny weeny, because I had a blanket when I was little, and it always smelled like either maple syrup, peanut butter, or watermelon. And of course, your blankie wears out as you get older. So I transferred those smells to my pillow, which I still have, which is probably about 67 years old. It's not much of a pillow left, but it carries the scent of the smells that I've carried through my life. And now I have a nightly ritual where I get out my essential oils of lavender, wintergreen, and orange. They've been switching around. And I use those as my alchemy on my bed nightstand and put those on my pillow. And it helps me sleep so much because it makes me feel safe. And I notice that every once in a while when my children come to visit, they will check out my pillow.
My name is Mark Mitchell. COVID it has been, still is, an especially difficult time for me through senses, for hearing and vision. And I don't know about you, you can't read lips with people wearing masks. And I say that as a joke because I have to deal with it. But COVID forced me to realize what I can't do when I can't see. When I can't see people's faces, I can't hear what they're saying, and it impacted my ability to participate in community service activities that I didn't feel comfortable with. I used to be a Metro van driver for the South County Community Services, and part of that is taking people to doctor's appointments and things like that, and we continue to do that. But part of it also is engaging in a conversation with the people riding along with you as a part of their enjoyment of life. And I couldn't do that. It just, road noise, lack of hearing and understanding, and the frustration of the anxiety of having to do it when you're trying to do some good. And that was driven home to me more than any other sense or loss of sense during COVID. I can't wait for us to reach the point where we feel comfortable not wearing masks, and I don't know when that'll be, but that's probably sense-wise the biggest impact of COVID on me and my senses.
Hi, I'm Catherine Niesink, and I think that it's been interesting taking walks lately because I stop and look at the trees and look at the bark and touch the bark because it's so tactile. And I go around my yard, I touch the branches on the brush and on the bushes and things to say, okay, what this is a smooth one. This has got this kind of I don't know if you can see me, kind of twisty bark. So it really, I have been much more careful about things like that since COVID.
Is this working? Yeah, it's working. About 10 or 15 years ago, I lost my sense of smell 100%, which scared my doctor, but it turned out okay. That's all it was. So I can't smell gasoline or vanilla extract or a rose, no matter how hard I try. But the good part of it is that I can remember how everything does smell. So that, believe it or not, really helps. And I can be driving down a road in the fall and somebody can be burning leaves. And I can drive through the smoke and pretend that I can smell, what that was like. So that's an interesting thing in my life.
My name's Nick. The unusual circumstances for myself, I've been in prison, so there hasn't been a lot of that kind of connectedness that I have since I've just recently got out of prison. I'm able to smell the things that I have not been able to smell for a very long time, such as the trees, feeling the wind, feeling that freedom that I can be able to get out and see things and connect, and just touching a tree, having an interaction with a dog, and just feeling that being able to be who I want and see the future of what I want to see myself being, and keep on connecting myself with that. I just saw that video with this waterfall, and I was like, I love waterfalls. It's one of my favorite places to be. And she was making a notice about the touching the sand. I haven't got the opportunity to do that yet, but I'm looking forward to it. My mom lives up in Ludington. There's the lighthouses out there, there's the beach. I just can't wait to hear the waves and everything else associated with that. And I'm just thankful to be back and can't wait to commune more with nature.
Well, I want to thank everybody for participating and sharing your thoughts and your feelings and your senses. Our closing song is What a Wonderful World. Go forth in simplicity, find and walk the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness, peace, and ease. Welcome the stranger. Open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous before the forces of hate. Hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all people. Go in peace.